Okay,
I've got to
telephone
tick
recording is
OK.
in progress, so that's good. So yeah, we were going to talk about jobs taxes, weren't we?
Yeah.
And I think if you were just to sort say jobs taxes to somebody in the pub or something, they would know what you mean. They would sort of know what that means, but they wouldn't really know what you're really talking about. Do you see what I mean? It could be many things to
Um,
people. Yeah. So why don't you start by explaining very high level, not the detail, what a jobs tax is. What you mean by jobs taxes
well,
generally?
a jobs tax is a tax on employing people. The national insurance employers charge is an obvious jobs tax because the employer's got to top up with the charge. So it's labelled employers' contributions. So that obviously is a
Yeah.
jobs tax.
Well, don't worry too
But
much
it,
about the detail. We can talk about that in a minute, about the individual taxes that you believe are jobs taxes, yeah? But what do you mean by a jobs tax? What does it mean to people? You know, the average person who's not going to understand a lot of this because they don't need to understand it, yeah? What does it
a,
mean? Yeah.
a jobs tax, quite simply, is the difference between what you can really buy with your wages and what it costs the employer to give you that amount. And
Okay.
it's a lot more than people think.
Okay, so it's kind of imposing on your income as an employee, yeah? And am I right? And you're saying that an employer has to pay it. Is that what you're saying?
An employer has to pay everything between what the employee can really buy with their money and they've got to shell out to make sure they end up with that amount. The spending
Okay.
power.
Yeah, okay. The spending plan. That's interesting because for my whole life, I've always thought, honestly, until you've mentioned this to me, and I know a bit about tax, I've always thought I paid my tax. I paid my income tax, you know. And are you saying that's not that's not really what happens? It's the employer who pays my income tax. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's an illusion.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, before we go into the detail of the types of job taxes, why, this is probably a bit deep, but why is it an illusion? Why would people make it an illusion? What's the point of that?
Well, to make it they want to make people feel that everybody's contributing to society through what they think of as the taxes they pay. But it's a great deception. And it began
Okay,
with PAYE in 1944.
right. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay, and when you say they, I mean, I'm not trying to create a conspiracy theory here, but what do you mean? Who are they? You know, not exactly, but I mean, generally, who do you mean by they?
It's political leaders and opinion formers, journalists, academics,
Okay.
theoreticians.
And why would they want to do that, do you think, if it's not true?
I think they feel more comfortable with it.
Hmm. Okay.
And
Okay.
it was partly a way of selling the welfare state.
Yeah. So it's kind of, do you mean it's kind of ideological then? This view that jobs taxes are paid by the employee. Yeah. Is that kind of an ideological thing?
Yes, I
Hmm.
think so.
It's a belief system. Okay. All right. Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, there's a lot of that going on, isn't there? As there has always been. So what would be a jobs tax then? What would be a jobs tax and why is it a jobs tax? I mean, go through the big ones, starting with the biggest.
Well, the big one is PAYE income tax. And then you can add in national insurance, both employers and employees' contributions. But in the end, you can also, to some extent, add in sales taxes,
Okay. What, VAT and
all
GST
sales
Australia? Yeah.
taxes,
Yeah.
taxes on anything that you buy.
Yeah. So we can go back to the national insurance and income tax, which are more obvious, but tell me more about the VAT. That's interesting because it doesn't seem to be for the average person, that wouldn't really seem to be connected. But tell me why.
Well, sales taxes cut into the real purchasing power of wages. To buy £100 worth of goods, you've got to pay maybe £120 in your pocket in net pay. That's before you even start.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
there's more to be
Okay.
said on income. There's more to be said on VAT another time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
But for the sake of simplicity, we'll assume that what we call the incidence of sales taxes falls on the purchaser.
Okay. Or the employer, you mean? Weren't you saying the employer
Well,
rather
then
than
it
the
gets
purchaser?
passed backwards, you see, because
Okay.
the if the real wages are £100 worth of goods, then the net pay has got to be £120 or whatever the figure is.
Hmm.
That £20 accounts as sales taxes.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got to add in PAYE, which has come off the gross pay, and employees' national insurance has come off also off the gross pay, and then the employer's got to top it up with employers' national insurance. But you end up with two figures. One is net purchasing power of wages, which is real wages, and the other one is gross labour costs. And there's a diagram that we could put up which shows this. The blue bars are in the diagram are real wages, net
Okay.
purchasing power, and you can see how as pay level rises, the figures get higher and higher. It goes from it's about 78% of gross labour costs are real purchasing power for workers at the bottom of the pay scale, but at the top of the end, at the top end of the pay scale, is only 45% is real wages. The other 55%, it's a surcharge of 55% on top of the real wage of our people in the executive level, where they're paying top rate income tax. And the effect actually is to make it very expensive to employ executives and managers, top managers.
Well, that's not going to be a very popular statement for the tax avoidance activists, is it? That's
No,
that.
no.
Hmm. Okay.
It might be as much a reason that firms like Dyson have moved to Singapore as the fact that they've got to pay substantial taxes on low wages.
Yeah.
Makes
So
the
this
cost
is yeah.
employing executives is not the thing you want to drive up the cost of unduly.
Okay. Because you don't get much out of them from the money you pay, basically, not because they're not very good, but because of the tax. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And near the thresholds, people don't like to take a higher pay grade if it pushes them into
Yeah.
a higher tax band.
Yeah.
There's very little extra to show for their extra responsibility.
Yeah. Okay. So have you got a sort of rough number of how much the jobs taxes? I think we've gone through all the job taxes more or less, haven't we, roughly? There
Yeah,
might be
yeah.
some more smaller ones, but yeah. But how much do people pay in jobs taxes then? Because we think we pay, if I only earn 20 grand a year or something, I think I pay 20%, don't I? Yeah. But how
Well,
much do I actually pay if I'm the lowest class of earner?
well, as an employee, I'm suggesting you don't really pay the tax. The employer carries the burden of the tax.
Okay,
It
yes,
looks
I'm
as if you
sorry.
pay.
Yeah, that's the point,
It
isn't it?
looks as if you pay, and people are
Yeah.
convinced that they do, but
You
it's
see, I
not
still
quite.
think I pay it, you see. This is the crazy thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
All
right.
right. So how much
But
does the employer have to find on just take the average, person that's just about able to work before they go, I'm not going to work anymore, I'm just going to take welfare. Yeah. How much does the employer have to pay to keep them employed, to make them, to make them employable?
well, at the bottom end, it's actually not too bad. It's about 60% is real pay, and the other percent of the total is tax.
Well,
But it,
people think they
as
only pay
President,
20% tax, and you're saying it's twice as much. That's
I'm,
quite
I'm,
bad.
talk- I'm talking about the difference between uh, your real purchasing power of your real wages
Yeah.
and what the employer has to pay to give you
Okay.
that amount.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still thinking in the employee terms again,
Yeah,
aren't I? Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't really care how much the employer pays, do I? Because I'm just getting what I'm getting. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you don't care, but the employer does, because
Yeah.
if you don't add the value of your gross pay through your work, the job will just disappear.
And what would it be for someone, say, on 100,000 a year, six-figure salary, which people seem to hate those people. I don't know why, but they're sort of hated people, aren't they, for some
Um,
reason? Yeah.
roughly speaking, the employer's got to double the amount of the net
What,
purchasing
200,000?
power.
Seriously? That's from your
No,
graph. Well, you can
no, I
splice
don't.
in your graph. You can splice in your graph when you edit the video, okay, and that people will be able to
Yeah.
see what's going on. Hmm.
The graph shows that for somebody on 100,000 a year, uh, about 48% is their net purchasing power of their real wages, and all the rest's tax out of uh, the total labour costs at that level. Now,
Okay. Yeah.
some of that 100,000 is rolled up into income tax and PAYE, national insurance. It's included in that figure, but it's just if you break down the figures a different way and look at total labour costs and real wages, that's the diagram shows what's going on,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
it's surprising and it's shocking.
So the poorest class of person that can employ them can be employed. They're in better shape than an executive, is what you're saying to me, because the business is going to want to employ an executive much less than they're going to want to employ someone on a low wage. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. The executives are going to get pressured to deliver hard to cover
Okay.
their enormous employment costs.
This sounds cynical of me to say this, but do you think people who don't like other people who get paid a lot of money, do you think they would be quite happy with this situation?
Or look what happened when Liz Truss tried to raise the tax threshold for the
I
higher
thought
rate tax.
that was a good thing as well, wasn't it? Yeah.
It caused a real furore. Nobody, not even the advocates of the policy, pointed out that it would make it less expensive to employ executives. But it's not just executives, it's quite highly paid professionals like train drivers are into that higher rate bracket, aren't they? And an awful lot of NHS
Mm.
staff are in
Yeah.
the higher range. Now, the situation then is that it becomes a government cost. These taxes are, in fact, a cost to the government. They're part of the cost of running the public service.
Okay, like the NHS, you mean? Yeah.
NHS is the worst case.
Yeah. Yeah. And why is that a problem? Can you flesh that out quickly without in a simple
Well,
way?
it, it, it deceives everybody. People think that the NHS costs the government a lot more than it really does.
Okay. And why doesn't
And
it
it,
cost a lot more than it really does?
because a lot of the money is just circulating in a loop.
Okay, yes, sort of. Is that what they call a transfer payment or something like that?
I think it's called churning.
Okay, churning. Yeah, okay.
Money in, money out, money in, money out, round and round it goes.
Yeah, okay. So it's not really nothing's really happening with it, really. Okay.
Well, it is.
Okay.
It's distorting decisions. It also
Okay.
costs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also a considerable cost to just administer it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I think people are slowly becoming aware of that. Yeah. Okay. This system that's probably a bit over-engineered. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what is the effect then? There will be unintended consequences of jobs taxes. Yeah, I think we might have gone into some of them already. But what is the biggest externality of jobs taxes?
Well, a lot of the more marginal industries have just closed down. Steel making and mining went because uh, they appeared to be uneconomic, but in fact, a lot of the cost of that was tax. It was just enough to tip them into unprofitability. But then another consequence is the loss of jobs that sort of need doing, like conducting buses, cleaning. It's a big cost on the care sector.
Yeah.
Uh, and the jobs disappear, or the manufacturing gets exported, and we've choked off our industry, basically, manufacturing. It's not just in England, Britain either. It's all over West. Every country that does this is choking off its industry, and then it goes to low labour cost countries where they haven't got this
So it's
system.
kind of a race to the bottom, you mean, it races to the worst country or the least.
It raises the worst country. Now, some of those countries have got some sort of welfare because they raise their taxes from other sources, but where they
Yeah.
don't, you've just got to. It's pretty perilous for the
Yeah.
workers altogether. They're living hand to mouth if they haven't got any tax system at all.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Probably
So
Bangladesh and
yeah.
places like that.
Now, look, I understand what you're saying and I believe you, yeah, because I sort of get what you're saying. But there's going to be a lot of people that will object furiously to what you're saying here, yeah, even though you explained it reasonably well that even people who are not familiar with the topic would understand it. So what sort of objections do you think you'll get? What will what will they say to you if they're trying to sort of shut the idea down?
I think what happens is there's two objections. One is that the idea that people do pay their tax, and that one's very difficult to shift.
Okay.
Another one's the idea that people ought to pay their tax.
Hmm.
There's also a general idea that employers are wicked people, and of course some of them might be, but
Yeah.
there's a default assumption that they
Yeah.
all are, and ideas are just ingrained. People have been
Yeah.
indoctrinated with the idea for nearly 80 years.
Yeah. So 80 years. So yeah. So an idea that you've lived with your whole life is hard to change. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Why do you say 80 years? And why do you say it's been here for 80 years? Because I think we've been taxing people like this for a long time, haven't we?
It
Hmm.
started in 1944, to be precise. That was when PAYE was introduced,
Okay.
and followed shortly after by national insurance. That goes back even earlier, but the big one was under the Attlee government. But of
Was
course,
that,
what you've got is
do you mean the welfare state? Do you mean here?
welfare state. Now, what you then end up with is a doom spiral, what I'd call, because it costs more and more. As it was okay at first because not many people were dependent on welfare, but the pressure to get rid of jobs gradually pushing more and more people on welfare, and uh, higher and higher levels of tax on labour goods and services, which, as I say, are all jobs taxes when you look into them. And the situation can only get worse and worse and worse, and then it finally implodes. I think we're approaching that now.
Okay.
I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago. They said that employment among the under 25s in Sweden is 25%.
Hmm.
Employment, not unemployment. And most of those jobs are pretty rubbishy jobs. The workers are stressed. The people are working well below what they
Yeah.
qualified to do. And I don't know how long that can go on for.
Why are they
But,
stressed? What's the stress got to do with it?
well, the stress is it's costing so much to employ people, but also with such high unemployment levels, workers can be ill-treated and
Yeah.
employers will get away with it.
There's a lot of competition for the lower
Mm.
wage, isn't there? Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
It's driving down wages.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's horrible. All right. All right. Okay. So I think we've covered quite a lot of it. I'm very interested in what you said about the resistance to this idea, though. And can you go into that a little bit more? We've gone through people don't want to change their minds about, long-held beliefs. But what about the first two you mentioned about why people don't would resist? Because I think it's important. This may sound like not that important, but I think it's important because, you know, if you want to get people, if you want people to understand this idea you're telling them about, which you believe is true, yeah, that's the resistance you've got to overwhelm, isn't it?
I think you can talk to people, but I think study the diagram,
Okay, yeah.
which I'll put back up to finish with again.
So it's like you can lead a horse to water, basically, can't you? But you've just got to hope people try to find out. Okay, all right.
Study that diagram, but I think also a lot of people are not that numerous and it's difficult to understand the implications.
Yeah, I mean, it's not simple, is it? I mean, it's not simple
No,
to talk about those things for most people, even if you're a smart, intelligent person. It's a brand new topic. So, yeah. And
but I think
nobody, but don't we employ, elect, or select people for that job, though? This is probably a bit philosophical, but yeah.
it's another big subject.
Another big topic. Yeah. Okay.
I
Don't
think
worry about
I
that.
think people who get elected are people who are good at getting elected,
Yeah, that's
which
true.
is a different skill set,
Yeah.
to put
I
it
think
politely.
I wouldn't have a go at those people. And people who get selected by us, they have a particular skill set as well, don't they? Let's be fair.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And what else is there? I mean, have you got anything else? So basically, it's causing unemployment, really, isn't it? Job taxes cause unemployment. Is that what you're saying in the big picture?
It's worse than that. It's causing a tendency for unemployment to just grow and grow and grow.
Hmm. Okay. And that will lead
It's,
to recession, is what you were saying? The death
no,
spiral.
I think it's more than recession. I think it's gradually lead to destabilization of society.
Okay, that's a big thing to say. That's a big one.
It's much worse than recession. You,
Yeah.
you can't have 75% of people under the age of 25 unemployed, if that figure's correct. I haven't
Yes.
verified if it was something that somebody said to me. But looking at the number of
Yeah.
young people hanging around the city centre in the middle of Gothenburg, it wouldn't surprise me if it was true.
That is very bad. Very bad for the poor in spirit. That would be
Yeah,
very bad. Yeah.
yeah.
For the poor things. Yeah. Okay, so what else have you got to say before we go? We've been talking long enough now. So
I think there's a whole series of videos to be made. I think we'll
yeah.
sit down and come up with some more material
Let's see what
soon.
people say. Let's see
Yeah,
how people respond, and then we can
yeah,
respond with an answer. Okay. Great. Okay. Well,
okay.
I'm glad you're looking much better now after
Yeah, yeah,
your cold, yeah, which is a horrible disease, obviously.
yeah.
But, anyway, thank you. Bye
Okay,
bye.
okay. Bye, bye.